Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make improvements in your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon, presented by 17 Hats. Hello and welcome to your bonus episode of the month where I chat through what we are talking about over on the Patreon group. So if you're unfamiliar, there is a paid group of followers. The platform is called Patreon. It's just like a podcast listener. And that is where I record a bonus episode every week regarding whatever book of the month we're currently reading through. So our February book of the month was Get Different by Mike Michalowicz. So I love this guy. You might remember him from The Pumpkin Plan or Profit First. Those are two of my top books. And this one, Get Different, also has made the cut. I think it's probably top 3 books that we've read in the book club. There's so many practical tips, things that you can implement, and he tells you exactly how to do it, which is the type of book that I really like. It gives you actual action steps. And while there was a lot in this book, I'm very motivated to try all of these things. And it was focused on marketing, which I feel very interested in right now since I left my job. Actually, when you listen to this, yesterday was my last day. So I am officially full-time self-employed, which has gotten me thinking way more about sales, about marketing, because I've always just kind of waited to see what comes. I've always waited to see what comes into my inbox or who wants to work with me versus who I want to work with. So I'm very excited by the idea of actually figuring out who I want to work with and like going after them with some strategy. So jumping right into the book, the first thing that he talks about is the title, Get Different. And if you have been with me for a while, we also read a book called Purple Cow, and it was really similar. So the idea of Purple Cow was this idea that when you're driving down the street and you see a cow, the first time you notice it, and the second time you sort of notice it. By the third cow, no one's excited to see any more cows. So if it were a purple cow, though, you would take note, right? If it stood out, if it was really different, you would notice it. And that whole book was about how being different is the most important thing in your business. So this, I feel like, was almost like a continuation of that book, which was much older. This book is written, I think, a year ago. It's not very old at all. And it's about this idea that, excuse me, I've been sick for so long, I can't fight this cold. This idea that in order to market, you have to be different because as soon as you're the same as everybody else, you become invisible. Even within your industry, within all industries, it's like we all revert back to what's comfortable because it's what other people are doing. But the minute you start doing what other people are doing, it becomes ineffective because you're lost, you're invisible. One of the best examples that he used in the book was the idea of a sign spinner. So people used to just hang signs for their businesses outside. And eventually there were so many signs, they just became invisible. Like when you're driving down the street, you're not processing all of the signage that you see until someone said, hey, take this sign and actually like wiggle it around, stand on the street corner and wave it around. And then it kind of escalated from there. And these sign spinners started doing like tricks and there's actually competitions and they weren't just wiggling the sign. They were like doing spins and tossing it. And all of a sudden they picked up all of this traction, right? Like every business had a sign spinner outside because it was a way to attract attention. It was different. And that became so seen all over the place. Even that now has become invisible. So it's like you can't sleep on these things. It's not like something that works today is necessarily going to work in a year. Things change. So you have to always have what he calls experiments running. So now let's talk about the formula. Getting into his actual like prescription of how we should market. He says he calls it the DAD formula, DAD, and it stands for different, attract, and direct. So in a nutshell, you need to be different in the first place. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. You need to be different. And then you need to make sure that you're actually attracting the right people, because it is possible to be different for the wrong reasons or stand out in a way that's going to actually turn off your ideal clients. Like if you are super, fun and party and there's lots of photos of, I don't know, like you drinking, or you make funny sayings on your balloons that like use swear words, that is going to appeal to maybe like a bachelorette crowd, maybe like a young, fun audience, probably not as appealing to a corporate audience. So it totally depends on who you're trying to attract. Like you can be different and actually hurt your business if you're not using it to attract the right people. And then the final one is direct. It's really important that every piece of marketing has a very clear directive. So what do you want them to do when they see your ad? Do you want more Google reviews? Do you want more inquiries? Do you want more clicks? Do you want more follows? What do you want? And he argues, and I agree, you always want the directive to be something that generates income. Like when in doubt, direct them to give you money. That should always be the number one goal. There will be some times that you're doing promotions to just raise awareness or get more reviews or, whatever. But when you can't decide, when you're not sure what you're trying to market for, it should generate revenue. It should be something that pushes people to work with you and give you money. Now, moving on to the next section. Now, I will say, if any of that sounded interesting to you, there's an episode on each of those sections over in the Patreon group. This book was really, really meaty. So this episode is just going to be a summary. Over in Patreon, I actually get into all of the details, all of the, how-tos, what I'm working with, what I'm struggling with, honestly. This book pushed me a lot. From episode to episode, I was like changing my mind and changing my plans, and it was a fun one. I think it's one I'm definitely going to go back and reread eventually, but this will just kind of be that summary. So if you want the deep dive, the Patreon group is $5 a month, and you can get to that by clicking in the show notes where you're listening. All right, let's move on. This was another huge takeaway for me and something that I haven't completed yet, but I really like. And this is the idea of your target 100. So if you could work with anybody, your ideal clients, these aren't your current clients. These aren't your 100 best clients. These are your top 100 clients that you would like to work with. So your dream list, but I would say within reason, right? We're not going to put like Beyonce on here, unless you live around Beyonce. I do not. I am putting like corporate partners that I would like to work with. I'm finding, big festivals that I would like to get involved with local schools, right? But it's not just the company. It's not just the idea of these organizations. It's the actual person. So that's going to require a lot of work. So going in on LinkedIn and figuring out who is in charge of their marketing or who works in HR, who is that actual person? Can I find their email? Can I find their phone number? This is like your dream client list. So in order to convert any of these to real clients, you actually have to know who they are. It's not enough to just say, administrative assistant at this big company. Like you have to find out who they actually are. So of anything in the book, I would say that is like the biggest piece of homework, something that you're not going to finish in like a day. I mean, I guess you could, but it's a lot of work. Like I still haven't finished my list, and I have been reading this book for a month now. So it's one of those things that 100, I think, is a really intimidating number. I actually got a message on my phone this morning from Joette from Balloon Coach, and she listened to the episodes and was like, just start with like 10. Like 100 is a lot. Just start with 10. Don't like overwhelm yourself. And then later on, once we start doing these experiments, again, I tend to get carried away. Like, oh, I'm going to send like 1,000 postcards. And it's like, calm down, just send like 2, just like start. But we'll get more into the actual like action steps in a little bit. So we've talked about the DAD formula. We've talked about the target 100. So that's your ideal clients. And then we're going to talk about the experiments. So this is the part of the book that I really enjoyed, and it really got my wheels turning. Like I'm not usually a marketer. I mean, I think of ideas, but like I've never had to market. I have always had a very passive marketing strategy, if you'd even call it that. Like I started like everyone, and you get word of mouth, then you have a website, then you have Instagram. But Mike Michalowicz argues that none of those things are marketing. Like, those are not you going after the people you want. That is all gravy. Like, word of mouth is great, but it's not a marketing strategy. He said a strategy is something that you can actually like turn up the dial when you need more clients and then turn down the dial when you don't need as many clients. And that statement, that visual was the part of this book that I was like, yes, tell me more. So this idea that we are in control, like, it's a little slow. I'm just going to use this strategy that I know brings in all the new clients. And then when all of a sudden it's, June and we're all overwhelmed, what if you could just kind of turn that down, and now I'm not going to really do any of that marketing right now because I'm swamped. And then when things slow down, I'm going to turn the dial a little bit back up. I love that analogy. I love that idea. I want to crack that code. And he says that the biggest myth that marketers love to tell people is that if your marketing isn't working, it's because you're not doing enough of it. And he said that's usually not true. Typically, it's not working because it's not working. And if you do a marketing experiment and nothing happens, move on, pack it up and move on to the next one. And I like that attitude because I'm not great at like the follow through, if that makes sense. Like, I love having ideas and I stay excited about them until they're not really working. And then it's really hard to like revamp and change things up and try again and again and again. That is not fun for me. So I like that he says that's actually not a great strategy. If it's not working, it's probably not that great of a marketing strategy. Something that is effective should be effective right away. And it's not going to be effective to everybody. It's not like you're going to do your first experiment and 100 of your top 100 are going to turn into clients. But like 1 or 2 might. And if they don't, then he said it's a pretty good indication that that strategy isn't working. So let's take a break and then start talking about the actual experiments, these marketing experiments, because I love it. I love everything about it. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll get into a little bit more about Get Different by Mike Michalowicz.
Are you looking to add grab-and-go garlands to your website so that you can increase revenue and send those clients somewhere when you're already booked for a date? If so, my name is Jeff. I'm with BalloonSuite.com, and my team specializes in online marketing for balloon decor businesses. We can help you get that grab-and-go garland flow set up exactly the way that we see working with many, many other businesses. You can learn more about what we do and reach out at BalloonSuite.com.
All right, welcome back. So we have talked about the DAD formula. So it's different, attract, and direct. Then the target 100, which is the clients that you want to work with, who they actually are, not the idea of them. And now we're moving on to the experiments. So I love this section of the book, and I love that he calls everything having to do with marketing an experiment. I think he says it's really strategic, and I think it's smart. Because he said, like, in a science experiment, there is this expectation that it's going to fail. Like, there is part of the experiment is the hypothesis and then the outcome. And most of the time, it fails. It doesn't work the way you think it's going to work. So going in with that attitude will set you up for more success than going in with this idea of having like a marketing plan, a marketing strategy. Because what if you have a plan and it doesn't work? It makes you seem like you've done something wrong. It makes you think like, oh gosh, well now I have this marketing plan that I was going to focus on this entire year, and it's the 3rd month of the year and nothing has happened. But well, it's my marketing plan, so I'm just going to stick with it and I'm just going to double down. And he says, no, don't do that. It's an experiment. It failed. Move on. Pack it in and move on to the next experiment. So I love that idea, that having the idea of failure ingrained from the beginning is a really good attitude to have. So when you think of it as an experiment, he said most of your ideas are going to suck. Like 1 out of 20 of your ideas is going to be good and the rest are going to suck. But he said the biggest difference between you and your competition is your willingness to try those ideas that suck, because you won't always know which ones are bad and which ones are good. Sometimes the ones that you think are the stupidest are going to be the best, but your competition will be too afraid to even try it in the first place. So they're not going to know. So he said, you're probably going to get embarrassed. You're probably going to feel like you had a good idea that isn't a good idea, or, the courage is the biggest part here. Just the idea of taking action and doing something will put you ahead of the competition, because he said most people don't have the courage to try the different experiment. It seems too weird, it seems too out there, so they just retreat back to what is comfortable, what they quote unquote know works, even though it's not working and everybody else is doing it and it's not working for them either. So we're all just becoming invisible. Something that I think of as like the same and not working is Instagram, right? Like we all post on Instagram. We all know we're supposed to be active on there. We all know that that's just like an easy thing that we can do to feel like we're marketing. But then you just become invisible, like, right? You just blend in. There's so many balloon people. And I'm not saying don't post on Instagram. I still think that's like portfolio work. That's a good place to be. But that shouldn't be your only form of marketing, especially because you have so little control over who sees any of that. Like if you have your list of top 100 clients and you post on Instagram, I bet 0 of them are going to see your post, and probably 0 of them are going to engage, and probably 0 of them are going to convert. So if you look at it that way in terms of an experiment, that's a failure, right? Posting on Instagram and just hoping that one of your ideal clients sees it, that is not a strategy. That is not a marketing plan. That is, I would say, promotion, because it's free, right? Marketing is paid, promotion is free. Posting to Instagram is not a marketing strategy. It is a promotional tool, period. So he says that just getting to the point where you're willing to experiment and be different is half the battle, because most people won't do that. So he said, you have to do them, you have to measure the results, and you have to do something new if it's not working, right? That this whole idea of like, don't just double down. Don't fall for that old myth that if it's not working, it's because you need to do more of it. No, if it's not working, it's because it's not working. If you send out 10 postcards and none of them reach out to you, I wouldn't then go send out 1,000 more. It's probably just not a great strategy. So he said, just like an experiment, you have to set a hypothesis. You have to figure out like the length for how long this experiment is going to run. Then you have to find an end date, wrap it up, and evaluate your results. So there's actually a form that he has available, and you can write down all of your experiments. You're going to figure out, when am I going to do this? And I think that's a really good tip too. I feel like marketing always starts like now, this very moment when I think of the idea, and it ends never, right? Like it's just always ongoing. But he says, no, like when does this make sense? Are you going to do this marketing plan in March? And is it going to end April 1st? And then how are you going to evaluate the results? What is your directive, right? If nobody is doing the thing that you're directing them to do, then it's a failure. Move on. So some examples that he gives that are really simple are writing a letter. He says, like, do this today. Write a letter and find one of your top 100 clients, write a letter to them that says, hey, you might not know me, but I am a huge fan of your work. I'm very impressed with what you're doing with your business, and I'd love to work with you. And then sign it with your name and your cell phone number. And that's it. Like that to me was such a good example of like overthinking. Like I'm like, oh, I'm going to design these postcards, and then I'm going to get them printed, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And he's like, no, just like write a letter. Just do it right now and write it to one person. So again, I start getting in my head with like, oh, I have to do it to all 100 at the same time. And it's like, no, it can be ongoing. Maybe you're going to start your experiment March 1st, and you're going to write 2 letters a week, and you're going to do that until you write 100 of them. So that's going to be a year-long process. And how are you going to evaluate if it's successful or not? Another thing he talks about is evaluating your return on investment. If you have a client that could potentially spend $5,000 a year on your services every year for the next 10 years, maybe you're going to spend a little bit more on that marketing strategy. Maybe you're going to send something that's worth like $15 or $20. If you were in a different industry, certainly people spend thousands of dollars on these type of marketing gifts. I don't think that that's an appropriate budget for what we do. I would stick to like free or a couple dollars, right? I wouldn't advocate that anyone's going out and spending, $50 per potential lead. However, if anyone has the money to do that, I'd be really curious what the results are. I bet the conversion rate would be great. But that's something to consider. Like, how much money do you want to spend on this experiment? And you can have experiments that are free. You can have experiments that are paid, that cost money. And by figuring out when you're going to run the experiment, you could kind of break up some of those expenses. Maybe at the beginning of the year is when you're going to do your free or low cost marketing, because cash flow is kind of slow at the beginning of the year. January, February are pretty slow balloon months. And then maybe in the summer when things are going crazy and you're super busy, maybe that's when you're going to run a really exclusive marketing plan to just a few people and try to target some of your top 100 for like corporate parties, right? Like you're working in June to try to get those holiday parties at the end of the year. So I think getting ahead of it and planning things out is, again, something I don't typically do. I feel like most of us are on the back end of marketing, like, oh shoot, graduation's in a month, I better start marketing it. How fun would it be if it was like, graduation's in 9 months, I'm going to start marketing it now, or I'm going to get everything in place so when it is time to market, it's just a matter of dropping this stuff in the mail or sending these videos or placing these program ads, right? Like whatever your ad is or whatever your style of advertising is going to be. All right, I need to take a sip of water. My throat is dying. Let's take a break to hear from a sponsor, and then I want to wrap it up by sharing my personal takeaways and what I am actually going to do to start marketing. Teachable moments are back on Havin' a Party's Instagram Live. So this is super cool because it brings two of our sponsors together. Balloon Boss Summit is having a Teachable Moments edition, which means that instructors from Balloon Boss Summit, one of my favorite events of the year, are each doing a live teachable moment over on the Havin' a Party Instagram page. So this kicks off on March 5th with Joette, balloon coach herself, and then moves on to Party Divas, Party People events, Amazing Balloons Inc., Confetti Castle, and Animated Art Balloons. These are some of my favorite friends in the industry and people that I cannot wait to teach alongside with at Balloon Boss Summit in November. So don't forget to tune in to Havin' a Party's Instagram page starting on March 5th. Just head over there right now and give them a follow if you don't already so that you don't miss these awesome live classes. And I also can't wait to see all of these instructors share their knowledge. I never miss one, and you can even see them after the live event over on Havin' a Party's Instagram page. Also, if you are in the market for balloons, which we all are, don't forget to shop at Havin' a Party Wholesale over on havinaparty.com and use the code BRIGHTBALLOON for 5% off at checkout. All right, welcome back. So my takeaways, first of all, I loved it. I got overwhelmed. I didn't do much of the homework while reading the book. I feel like I've needed some time to digest, to actually consider some of these ideas, and now I'm really excited to start taking action. So two of my plans, something that I am going to do, is using program ads in local high school musicals, spring plays, concerts, like their end of the year fine arts performances. They always have a program or a playbill or something. So I am going to have a small experiment. My goal is to get into 5 programs. I'm already in 2, and lucky for me, they haven't cost any money. I actually reached out to ask how much they would be to sponsor, and then before I actually did that, it occurred to me wait, I'm gonna donate balloons. So I'm gonna do lobby decor for these events, and then I'm going to get a program ad in the program. Now, I am not an advocate of donating free work, but this is on my terms. I don't see this as donating free work. I see this as negotiating a free ad because balloons cost less than what the ad would, right? You can do, if an ad is $200, I can make $200 worth of balloons look like $1,000 worth of balloons, right? It looks really impressive. That I rather do because then my balloons are on display in the lobby of these events, and then people sit down, right? They're bored. There's literally nothing to do for the 15 minutes before the show starts or the 20-minute intermission. So they're going to sit there, they're going to look through, they're going to look at photos of the kids in the show, they're going to read the little bios, and then they're going to get to my beautiful program ad that says, now booking for graduations. And I have balloon photos in there, I have my website, and I have a QR code. And that is it. That is my experiment. My target audience is going to be high school parents with graduating students. It's a really narrow focus, but that way I was able to really, really target my ad. Instead of just being general balloons, I'm going for graduation. And the timing of this is important too because I wouldn't run that same ad first semester. I feel like this is only appropriate in spring. Parents aren't thinking about graduation in October. So this is going to be my second semester program advertising experiment. I'm going to run it from, I think, March is going to be my first one, March 1st through probably, I can't imagine there's a concert after May. So March, April, May, I'm going to try to get into 5 high school programs local to my town, right? This is something you can do local in your area. And my budget is essentially the cost of balloons. So I'm not spending any money. I am just donating balloons, which of course is money, but it's not an actual like financial commitment. And then I wait and I'm going to experiment. But part of that is, how do you measure your results? So I am putting in my lead capture form, I already have a little drop down that says, how did you hear about us? And it's like Google or, a friend. And I am going to add a local high school program booklet ad or something. Like I want them to be able to say like, I found you in this program ad, because then I'm able to evaluate my results. So in 3 months, if I've gotten none of those, I will assume that this experiment didn't work and I'm going to move on to the next one and not do those same program ads over and over, which is huge for me because I do some donated work, right? Like I work with a couple charities a year, and I've never measured the results of those things. And I would argue that actually the results have been 0. I don't know that anybody has booked me because my logo was on a banner at a local festival. Like I don't think anybody has converted from that. So that's a problem if then year after year I just say like, yes, I'll donate balloons again because I did last year. Versus saying, actually I loved supporting your event last year. Unfortunately, it didn't result in any sales on my end, so I can't do that again this year. I think that makes sense to people, especially businesses on our scale. We are not huge corporations who have like, what's it even called? There's like a name for it. I can't think of it. Basically, they have to commit, corporate responsibility. They have to commit so much money to going back to the community to help. I don't have that. I don't have a corporate responsibility. I'm not McDonald's. I'm not Walmart. So anything I donate really is like money out of my pocket. So if it's not resulting in money back in my pocket, I think anyone would understand why you would choose not to sponsor again. And I think measuring the results is part of that. I have printed out these experiment sheets from the book. They simply just kind of map out the who, what, where, when. But I like having hard copies in this situation. I'm just slipping them right inside my planner because even when I'm not ready to act on an experiment, it's a place to write the idea down and just kind of keep it for later. Another huge takeaway is that you shouldn't do all of these experiments at the same time. It just gets too overwhelming. So one at a time is best. So the one that I'm doing right now is my program ads. And then I'm just really focusing on the big balloon build, which is coming up later this month. I wouldn't say I necessarily have like a marketing strategy around that, but I definitely will have a large email list after the event that I will be able to take away, and that will be a great starting point for future experiments. But the one that I'm going to focus on right now is the program ads because it's simple. It seems like I already have the ball rolling and it feels very easy to assess. And then after that, I definitely have some plans to do like postcards and handwritten snail mail. I think some of that is so old that it's different. Like it'll stand out because it's just not something that people do. But in terms of my next step, it is going to be these local program ads in performing arts schools, or not performing arts schools, the performing arts department of a school, because also that's a foot in the door. Then you know someone and it's a lot easier to say, who coordinates your prom? Who does your graduation ceremony? Hey, who's in charge of homecoming? Like you can get a foot in the door and then have even more opportunity to network in the future. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I loved this book. Even if you don't join the book club, I would definitely put Get Different by Mike Michalowicz on your must-read list. I saw it at my library last week, so it is new enough that like you should be able to check this out places and not even buy it or rent it. But I listened to it on Audible. I listened to all these books on Audible, and this one was really great to listen to. Actually so nice to listen to that it was hard to take notes because I just wanted to listen and enjoy all of it, but I had to like take notes and record the episodes. I think that's why I haven't done as much of the work, because I really listened to every word of this book because I thought it was so good. So highly recommend. If this interests you, the Patreon book club is waiting for you. And the second you join, you get access to every book we've ever read. So I think we're up to like 13 or 14 books, and you get all the episodes all at once. So you can binge for a month and then leave, whatever. There's about 115, 120 of us listening over there, and I reference these books more and more. I feel like they all build on each other, and they've really started to kind of direct my business and give me some direction. I feel like you get into business and you kind of don't know what you don't know. And then the more you grow and the more you take on, the more I'm excited to learn. So our next book of the month is called Company of One, and it is about a very, very small business, solopreneurs like me. So that is going to be our next one, kicking off on March 1st. All right. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week with a regular episode. Thanks for listening. As usual, I tried to keep it bright and light. If you are interested in bonus episodes, check out our Patreon group where I release an additional episode every single week, and you unlock more than 50 archived episodes as soon as you join. Check out the link in the show notes wherever you're listening.